"Can you pretend to be my boyfriend for one night?" Shy Cooker asked the rancher, who'd just been dumped. It was a sweltering night in the dusty town of Hollow Creek. The sundown saloon buzzed with sweat and noise, boots stomping against worn floorboards, men shouting over poker, and the occasional clang of a whiskey bottle meeting the edge of a bar counter. Ceiling fans spun lazily overhead, stirring more dust than air. Evelyn Evie Harper kept her head down as usual, her apron smudged with flour and bacon grease, cheeks flushed from the heat of the kitchen stove. She moved quietly from the swinging door of the kitchen to the bar, refilling empty glasses and dropping off plates with practiced speed. She had only been in town for a few weeks, and though no one bothered to know her name, some already looked too long at her, with eyes she had learned to avoid. One of them was Curtis Malloy. Curtis was a regular, loud, mean, and 3 whiskeys past decent. He had been watching Evie all night, with a crooked grin and a lopsided slouch. When she passed too close, he reached out and grabbed her wrist. "Hey now, pretty thing," Curtis slurred, pulling her closer. "How about you stop hiding in that kitchen and come sit on my lap?" Evie froze. Her tray clattered to the floor. She tried to pull away, but his grip tightened. "Come on now," he said louder. "Ain't no reason a girl like you should be working so hard. I got me a room upstairs. We could make it official. I'll make you my little wife." Laughter rose around the bar, but no one stood up. A few turned away. Others watched with shallow amusement. The bartender looked down, busying himself with bottles. Evie's breath hitched. Her heart thudded painfully in her chest. Then the saloon door creaked open, and a gust of warm wind blew in a stranger. He was tall, broad-shouldered, covered in trail dust. His black hat shadowed a rugged, square face with hard-set eyes that had seen too much. He walked with the deliberate calm of a man who knew exactly how dangerous he looked. Warren Wes. Remington scanned the room once, then made his way to an empty table in the back. He sat, ordered nothing, just stared straight ahead, until the noise of Curtis's drunken voice drew his attention. He watched. When Curtis let go of Evie's wrist to swat at her tray, she saw a single chance. She bolted. Her legs moved before her mind caught up, weaving through tables until she reached the corner where the stranger sat. Without thinking, she gripped his sleeve, clinging like a drowning girl to driftwood. "He's with me," she said, voice barely above a whisper, but clear. Then louder, desperate. "Can you pretend to be my boyfriend, just for tonight?" Wes looked down at her. Her eyes were wide, terrified. Her hand trembled on his arm. He could feel the pulse of her panic through his shirt. Behind her, Curtis was stomping over, red in the face. Wes stood. The room went quiet. Curtis stumbled to a stop. The difference in size was comical. Wes towered over him, the kind of man built for war, or worse. He did not raise his voice. He did not make a show. He only stared. "I suggest you walk away now," Wes said, his tone low and lethal. Curtis blinked, took a step back, then another. "She ain't worth it," he muttered, and turned, slipping out the saloon door with a coward's curse. The saloon burst into nervous cheers and laughter. Someone slapped the bar. A few clapped. But Wes did not smile. Evie, cheeks burning, backed away. "Thank you," she whispered, barely audible. Wes nodded once, then sat back down, arms crossed. Evie retreated behind the kitchen door. Her knees almost gave out as she gripped the counter, trying to breathe. Her heart still raced, her hand still tingled from touching his sleeve. Out in the saloon, Warren drank his whiskey alone, while the room slowly returned to its noise. But every so often, his eyes drifted toward the kitchen door. And behind it, Evie stood with her back pressed to the wall, wondering what she had just done, and why. It did not feel like a mistake. Morning came with the dry crackle of wind over sun-baked wood and the smell of dust rising off the street. The sundown saloon was quieter in daylight, just the clink of dishes and the low hum of coffee boiling in the back. Evie Harper stood behind the kitchen doorway, half hidden in the shadow of hanging pans. Her fingers fidgeted with the edge of her apron as she peeked into the dining area. He had come back. Warren Remington. Same black hat, same broad shoulders, same unreadable face. He stood at the counter now, laying down a few coins from his worn leather wallet. "I didn't eat anything last night," he said. The saloon owner, Mr. Greeley, looked up from his ledger. "Still took a seat, didn't you?" he said gruffly, though his eyes held something softer. "Money's good, but you're getting breakfast on the house. I don't need charity." "Ain't charity, it's from your girlfriend back there," Greeley added with a crooked smile, nodding toward the kitchen. "She's the one cooking it." Evie's cheeks flushed instantly. She ducked behind the shelf and nearly dropped the plate she was holding. "Girlfriend?" She nearly bolted out the back door. But she didn't. Instead, she plated 2 eggs, some buttered bread, and crisp slices of bacon. Her hands moved quickly, but her heart drummed like a drum in her chest. She wiped the edge of the plate twice, then carried it out, step by step, until she was standing in front of the man who'd saved her from humiliation the night before. Warren looked up as she placed the plate on the table. His eyes met hers. Evie bit her lip. "Good morning," she said, voice soft. "Morning," he replied. She turned to walk away, but his voice stopped her. "Do you still want me to pretend?" She froze. Slowly, she turned back. He was not smiling, but his tone wasn't mocking. He asked it the way a man might ask if she needed a door held open, or if she wanted sugar in her coffee, as if the question wasn't absurd at all. Evie let out a small, nervous laugh. "Maybe. Just long enough so people leave me alone." Warren nodded once, then picked up his fork. Evie stepped back toward the kitchen, but halfway there, she paused. "My name," she said without turning, "is Evelyn, but most people call me Evie." She waited. After a beat, he replied, "Warren Remington." Her lips twitched at the edge. Back in the kitchen, Evie stood at the counter, hands pressed to the wood, exhaling shakily. It had been years since someone asked her what she wanted. Not what she feared, not what she'd been told to do, but what she wanted. And somehow, in a saloon full of strangers, in a dusty town she barely knew, a man who barely spoke had given her that. A choice. A name. And, for the first time in a very long time, a quiet kind of morning that felt like something close to peace. The wind behind the sundown saloon carried the scent of firewood and dry grass. It was near midnight. Most of the lanterns in town had gone out, but one still glowed faintly in the alley behind the kitchen. Evie stepped out, apron still tied around her waist. The air was cooler now, crisp in a way that hinted autumn might not be far. She had not meant to listen earlier, but the words from Mr. Grady, the saloon owner, had lodged in her head. "Remington? That's the fella got left at the altar. Real shame, pretty girl, too." She had stilled, one hand resting on a basket of bread rolls, heart sinking. Now she saw him, Warren Remington, sitting alone on a stack of crates, staring up at the stars like they owed him answers. His frame, broad and unmoving, cast a heavy silhouette against the lantern's glow. She hesitated before approaching. "Mr. Remington?" she said softly. He didn't look over right away. "Evie?" "I'm sorry," she said. He finally turned, brows furrowed, voice low. "For what?" "I dragged you into all this, the lie, pretending." Warren gave a dry breath, something between a sigh and a laugh. "That? Hell, I've played worse parts in real life." She smiled faintly, stepping closer. "Still, if I had known what they said about your fiancé." His eyes flickered. "So, you heard." "I didn't mean to." "It's all right." He leaned forward, elbows on knees. "We were supposed to get married last spring. She left the night before the wedding, said I didn't love her right, or loud enough." Evie sat beside him, fingers folding into each other. "What did she want you to do?" He shrugged. "Say the words. Make speeches. I'm not built like that. I thought showing up every day, staying, building a life, that was love." She was quiet for a moment. "Would that have made a day for God?" Then whispered, "That is love." He glanced sideways at her. What about you? Someone like you, kind, soft-spoken. Someone must have wanted you. My family did, she said bitterly. For someone else. Warren straightened slightly. They tried to marry me off to a man twice my age. He had land, money. They said it was a good match. I was just a piece in their bargain. You ran? He asked. She nodded. Left everything. Took a train with $20 and a change of clothes. This town was the last stop. He whistled softly. Takes guts. No, she murmured. Just fear. I was afraid if I stayed, I'd disappear. They fell into silence again. The town around them seemed to sleep, unaware that two people who carried too much weight were sitting shoulder to shoulder, finding air again. Warren rubbed his jaw, eyes distant. She used to tell me I was impossible to understand, that she needed poetry and grand gestures. I never knew how to give that. Evie looked down at her hands. Maybe she didn't know how to see what was already there. He gave her a long look. And you? Anyone ever tell you you're impossible? All the time, she said, smiling tightly. But not because they couldn't love me, because they didn't want to try. There was something fragile in the space between them now, not quite sadness, not quite peace, just honesty, bare and unprotected. Evie reached out slowly, placing her hand atop his, rough, scarred, motionless beneath her touch. You don't need to say it, she said quietly. You showed it, when you stood up for me. His gaze locked onto hers, unmoving. The wind picked up, fluttering a loose curl at her temple. I didn't even know your name, he murmured. You didn't need to, she replied. They sat like that for a while, her hand over his, until the lantern burned low. Neither moved first, neither wanted to. Because in the ruins of old love, sometimes, something true begins to grow. The days slipped by, one sunburnt evening at a time. After the third night of Warren staying late, the saloon's owner, Mr. Greeley, made the offer casually while wiping a dusty glass. You ever think of sticking around? He asked. Place could use someone who makes the riff-raff nervous. Got an extra cot in the loft, meals included. Warren thought for a long second, then nodded. I'll earn my keep. Evie was in the back, chopping onions, when she heard. Her hand paused mid-slice. Something warm flickered in her chest. That night, after the rush died down and the last drunk staggered out the door, she brought 2 plates to the small prep table behind the kitchen. Simple stew, cornbread, and roasted root vegetables. Warren sat across from her. He did not say much. He never did. But he listened, and that was more than most. Over time, a rhythm formed. Evie learned he liked his eggs over hard, and that he poured pepper like it was gold dust. He learned she hummed when she chopped herbs, and that her left hand curled slightly when she was nervous. They talked in fragments. I hated turnips as a kid, he muttered once, frowning at the bowl. She smirked. Too bad, they're in everything here. Another night, while the rain tapped the windows, he told her about learning to ride bareback in Wyoming, how he broke his collarbone twice. She admitted she used to hide behind the stove when guests came over, afraid of being asked to speak. Why? He asked. She hesitated, then answered, Because I didn't think I had anything worth saying. Warren looked at her for a long time. That ever change? She met his eyes. Maybe a little. One evening, the saloon buzzed with unexpected traffic, riders from the next town over, passing through. Orders piled high. Evie worked fast, but something in her stomach twisted wrong. A deep cramp curled through her middle, then another. She pressed a hand to her side, breath hitching. But the grill sizzled, the tickets kept coming. Warren found her hunched near the sink an hour later, pale and sweating. You all right? He asked, crouching beside her. I need to finish the pies, she muttered, voice thin. He did not argue. He just nodded once, stood up, and returned 15 minutes later with a steaming mug of something that smelled of chamomile, mint, and honey. He placed it in her hands without a word, then pulled up a chair and sat silently beside her while she sipped. The warmth settled in her stomach, her breath steadied. After a while, she said almost inaudibly, "No one's ever taken care of me like that." Warren did not look at her, but his hand, resting near hers, stayed just close enough that she could feel the safety in its stillness. They finished their tea in silence. But in the quiet space between sips and heartbeats, something gentle grew, unspoken, undeniable. The afternoon sun beat down on Dry Creek, casting long shadows across the boardwalks and stirring up dust in the market square. Word had begun to spread, soft at first, the tall stranger and the shy cook. Evie heard it in the hush of the saloon kitchen, in the glances of guests, in the way children pointed as she walked by. "They say Harper's got herself a rancher for a beau," one woman whispered to another over boiled eggs and coffee. "Remington? That brute?" the other scoffed. Evie's hands shook the first time she heard it, carrying a pie toward a table. She stopped mid-step, closed her eyes, and took a deep breath. She imagined the tray crashing to the floor. Instead, she set it gently, forced a small smile, and kept moving. Warren noticed her tremor but said nothing. The rumors only seemed to make things quieter between them, more real somehow. Then came the invitation to the spring jubilee in the town square. Horseshoe tosses, fiddlers, lemonade stands, prizes for best cornbread. Mr. Greeley insisted the saloon would serve food at the event, and that Evie would attend, with her date. Evie froze when the words left his mouth. That evening she stood behind the saloon door, apron folded, heart pounding. She looked across the yard and saw Warren. Spotless boots, clean coat, silk kerchief around his neck, and a stray lock of dark hair brushing his brow. He looked nothing like a man pretending to stay. Someone tapped her shoulder. The saloon owner stood there. "You ready?" She nodded. He led her outside. The band was playing. Laughter spilled into the twilight. Children danced in ringlets of light. Warren stood beside her, smooth-jawed, confident. Gasps floated around, hats tipped, boots still. Evie's cheeks heated. She felt as though she were dancing on the blade of a knife, thrilled and terrified at once. And then she saw her. Lila Hastings, Warren's ex-fiancée. She arrived in a carriage, the polished wood glinting in the lantern light, her husband beside her, rich, refined, a satin waistcoat, visible beneath the coat. Lila's eyes flicked to Warren, then to Evie. The air shifted. Evie's throat tightened. Here was the moment. Warren turned and raised his hand to Evie. He offered her his arm. She took it. He lifted his hat politely and swept her into the crowd. They passed under lantern lights, hand in hand, as if they belonged. Lila's lips parted in a smile that didn't touch her eyes. Evie felt exposed, until Warren whispered low, "Only pretending unless you want it to be more." Evie looked up. He met her gaze unflinchingly. Something deeper than mockery glinted there. She nodded slowly. The music rose. The fiddler's bow flicked. People moved in circles. Boots tapped. Warren led her toward a clearing in the square. He cleared his throat and made an announcement to gathered folks, as if this were their night. "Ladies and gentlemen," his voice firm, "my friend Evie Harper has cooked many a meal for this town. Tonight, I'm proud to walk beside her." The crowd hushed. Evie's heart threatened to explode. Whispers rose. "Look at them. Wonder if it's real. About time." When Lila stepped forward, her husband trailing behind, she lifted a glass of lemonade. "Congratulations, Mr. Remington. I hope your arrangement turns out well." Warren smiled, but not cold. "Thank you, Mrs. Hastings. I hope the same for you." Lila's eyes narrowed. Evie tightened her grip on his arm. Warren squeezed gently. Then, softly, "Do you still want me to pretend?" Evie's voice was almost nothing. "I don't know, but I think I might want more." A hush fell. Warren raised his hat and tipped it to Evie. Children cheered. Evie looked around, eyes full of hope, not judgment. In that moment, the pretend mask fell away. And though the red dust still clung to boots and skirts, the truth of something real glowed brighter than any twilight lantern. The buzz of the spring jubilee faded. but the whispers remained. They lingered in corners, between swaying laundry lines and passing glances at the general store. Evie Harper walked through Dry Creek with her shoulders squared, her eyes forward, but her heart tucked itself behind ribs like a wounded bird. One morning, while fetching flour from the grocer, she heard it. Mrs. Trudell, a widow who ran the dress shop, leaned close to her neighbor and didn't bother to lower her voice. "She's sweet, yes, but let's be honest, he's a Remington. She's just a kitchen girl." Evie's hand tightened around the sack of flour. Later that day, she passed the porch of the chapel, where the preacher's wife murmured, "It's a nice story, but surely he'll grow tired of pretending." But it wasn't until the oldest woman in town, Miss Miriam, dressed in black from her hat to her boots, approached her directly in front of the saloon, that the words struck bone. "Child," she said, voice like dry twigs cracking, "you're kind, but you're not enough for him. He's been through too much, seen too much. Men like him need women made of steel, not sugar." Evie said nothing. She just nodded once. That night, she didn't stay late to scrub the counters. She didn't set out Warren's cup of tea the way she usually did. She went home early, alone. The little room she'd been renting above the old smithy felt colder than usual. She sat on the cot, holding the flour sack still creased in her arms, heart thudding like it did in the days she lived under someone else's roof and someone else's rules. Who was she kidding? She was a cook, a quiet one at that. The kind people forgot after their bellies were full. Meanwhile, Warren Remington was made of dust and muscle, and silence sharpened by war. He'd kissed her hand. He'd stood beside her in front of the whole town. She thought it meant something. But maybe she was just convenient. That thought echoed until morning. She didn't go to the saloon that day. By noon, someone knocked on her door. She opened it a crack, and there he was. Warren, standing with a slant of sunlight across his shoulder, his brow furrowed, mouth set. "I asked Greeley where you were," he said. She opened the door wider, still silent. "I figured you might need this," he added. He held something out, a small, square bundle of cloth. Evie blinked. It was the handkerchief she'd dropped the night she grabbed his arm in the saloon, faintly stained with strawberry juice and embroidered with a crooked little flower in blue thread. She took it gently. "You kept it?" she asked, voice barely a whisper. He nodded. "I figured it was the first thing you gave me. Didn't feel right throwing it away." Her eyes filled. "Everyone thinks I'm not enough for you." "I don't give a damn what this town thinks," he said. She lowered her head. "Maybe they're right." Warren stepped forward, close enough for her to feel the warmth of him. "You saved me that night," he said, his voice low. "Let me save you now." She looked up. "I wasn't pretending," he added. "Not when I stood up, not when I held your hand, not now." A silence hung between them. Then Evie reached out, fingers clutching his coat. "You really think I saved you?" He smiled, faint and rare. "You were the first person in months who looked at me like I wasn't broken." She pressed the handkerchief to her chest. "Okay," she said softly. "Save me then, but don't disappear afterward." "I won't," he said. "Not unless you send me away." She didn't. She stepped aside, letting him in. And for the first time in days, her little room felt like it might someday be a home. The skies broke open without warning. One day, the air hung thick and still. The next, it churned with rolling clouds, dark as spilled ink. Rain came hard and fast, angry sheets of water slapping the rooftops, turning the dry earth to sludge, turning the quiet creek at the edge of town into a roaring, hungry flood. Evie had just finished prepping dough in the sundown saloon's kitchen when the first screams echoed outside. "Flood!" someone yelled. "The river's breached!" Panic followed. Townsfolk scrambled for higher ground. Horses reared. Children cried. Evie didn't think. She just ran outside into the chaos. Water surged through the main road like it had grown teeth. A wagon had tipped sideways, trapped against a post. Clinging to the seat was a child, no more than 5, sobbing, legs kicking. Evie didn't wait for someone stronger. She hiked up her skirts and plunged into the current, arms slicing through the freezing water. "Hold on," she called, chest tightening. The current tugged at her legs. Her boots slipped, but she reached the wagon, gripped the soaked wood, and hauled herself up. The child wrapped tiny arms around her neck. "Mama, where's Mama?" "It's okay," she whispered, pressing her mouth to the child's wet hair. "I've got you." Behind them, the water swelled. And then a voice thundered through the rain. "Evie!" Warren. He was wading toward her, waist deep in the current, shoulders set, face grim. His coat was soaked, hair slicked back from his brow. "Pass the kid," he shouted. She did, carefully, gently. The child cried harder, but Warren held him firm, turning back toward the steps of the saloon, where a line of townsfolk reached to pull them up. But Evie's balance faltered. The moment the child left her arms, her foot slipped on the wagon's edge. She yelped, tumbled, and fell, striking the water with a splash. The current seized her. She barely had time to gasp. Then strong arms wrapped around her from behind. Warren. He'd leapt after her without a second's hesitation. His grip was iron. He twisted them sideways, shielding her with his own body as debris rushed past. His feet fought the mud beneath. Then someone shouted, ropes were thrown, and, inch by inch, they were hauled to safety. They collapsed beneath the saloon's awning, soaked and heaving. Evie's lip was bleeding. A cut on her arm seeped slowly. Her hands trembled. Warren crouched beside her, eyes scanning every inch. "Are you hurt bad?" I don't know," she panted. He touched her arm carefully. "We need to clean that." "I'm okay," she said, voice thin. "You're not okay," he snapped, softer than anger, more like fear. Their eyes met. Thunder cracked above. She whispered, "Is this still pretending?" His breath hitched. Then slowly, he reached out, calloused fingers brushing her cheek, thumb lingering where the blood had traced. "No," he said quietly, "hasn't been for a while." She leaned into his touch. Let the storm fade behind her. Then he kissed her, not rushed, not desperate, but steady. Like grounding two people who had both drifted for too long. Her fingers curled into his soaked shirt. The world stilled, even as rain poured. When they pulled apart, Evie was crying and smiling. "I'm sorry I waited so long," she whispered. He shook his head. "You didn't. We both needed time." A whistle blew. More shouts. The storm wasn't done, but the worst had passed. Volunteers formed chains to pass supplies. The townsfolk worked side by side. Evie stood, wincing at her leg. Warren immediately offered an arm. "Come on," he said. "Let's help finish this." She nodded. Hand in hand, they joined the line. And no one, not one person, called it pretend. The sun crested slow and soft over the hills, painting the sky in peach and gold. Dew still clung to the grass, sparkling like sugar over the meadow. A pair of horses grazed lazily beyond the fence line, tails swishing at the morning air. The little house on the hill, timber walls, white trim, roof patched by kind hands, stood still and warm in the light. Inside, the scent of fresh bread drifted through the open windows. Evie moved quietly through the small kitchen, tying her apron behind her back. Her hair was braided, tucked loosely beneath a scarf. The oven glowed. The morning rolls were rising. Outside, Warren returned from feeding the horses, sleeves rolled, boots muddy. He stepped onto the porch, paused to wipe his hands, and came inside. Evie was already setting the table, just 2 plates, 2 mugs, a jar of jam between them. "Coffee?" she asked, voice soft. He nodded. "Always." She poured it. He took it with a half smile. They sat together, the steam rising between them. No rush, no words for a while. Just the hush of a peaceful morning and the gentle clink of spoon on ceramic. Evie looked across the table at him. His jaw was rough with stubble, eyes still creased from sleep. She smiled. "You still pretending?" she asked quietly, resting her hand over his. Warren looked down at her fingers, small, flour-dusted, calloused in the places only years of work could form. He turned his palm upward, laced his fingers through hers. "I don't remember how to pretend anymore," he said. Her breath caught, but she didn't cry. Instead, she reached into her pocket and pulled out something small, wrapped in a linen scrap. She unwrapped it slowly, placed it on the table between them. A ring. Simple, wooden, smooth, with a tiny carving of a wheat stalk on one side. He had whittled it from an old fence post the night after she first made him that honey loaf. She pushed it toward him. "I kept it," she said. "Didn't know why, until now." He stared at it, then at her. His fingers trembled as he picked it up. She offered her hand again. No ceremony, no witnesses. Just two people, with no more masks to wear. He slid the ring onto her finger. She leaned forward, resting her forehead against his. "You gave me safety when I asked for it," she whispered. "And then, you stayed. You gave me something to come home to," he murmured. "I didn't even know I needed it." They sat like that a while, in the quiet. Outside, the town slowly stirred. Children's laughter echoed across the hill. Somewhere, a rooster crowed late. But here, in the little kitchen filled with warmth and bread and soft light, they found the kind of silence that didn't ask to be filled. Just shared. And held. She only wanted safety for one night. He only wanted silence. But in pretending to belong to each other, they found what neither dared dream. A love real enough to last. If that story warmed your heart like a sunrise over the plains, go ahead and hit that hype button and let Evie and Warren know their journey meant something. They may have started with a lie, but what they found was truer than most ever do. For more tales of accidental love, quiet strength, and dusty hearts learning to beat again, make sure you're subscribed to Wild West Love Stories. From lonely saloons to windswept barns, we bring you stories where every scar has a story, and every silence hides a deeper longing. Because out here in the wild, love does not arrive in ball gowns or moonlight. It rides in on tired horses, holds your hand when the town turns away, and stays when pretending is no longer enough. So stick around, partners. There's always another story around the bend. See y'all on the next ride.